Generation Z is more diverse, equity-focused, pragmatic, entrepreneurial, intrapersonal, and self-directed than the generation before them. First, there is greater racial and ethnic diversity among Generation Z than previous generations. Overall, we will see a 1.8% decrease in the 6 to 17-year-old white population in 2018. We will also see a 7.6% increase in the 6 to 17-year-old Hispanic population over the next 5 years, which is the fastest growing population in the United States. Research is showing that the numbers of high school graduates will decline through 2023. There will be decline in the white student population, counterbalanced by growth in the number of non-white public school graduates. Hispanic and Asian and Pacific Islander enrollment will grow in particular. Even in 2024 to 2026, when the nation is projected to see some overall increase in the number of high school graduates, there will be about 110,000 fewer white public high school graduates than there were in 2013. We also know that this generation has a less restrictive view of gender norms and roles. 56% of 13 to 20-year-olds say they know someone who goes by gender-neutral pronouns, compared to 43% of people aged 28 to 34 years old. Over a third of Generation Z also strongly agrees that male or female does not define a person as much as it used to. Only 44% say they always bought clothes designed for their own gender, versus 54% of millennials. And 70% of Generation Z feels there should be gender-neutral bathrooms available in public spaces, compared to 57% of 21 to 34-year-olds. Above all, Generation Z values transparency. Combined with their ability to organize and mobilize, they will continue to be vocal about their demands for racial, gender, and sexual equity. 72% of Generation Z consider racial equity to be the most important issue today. 64% consider gender equity, and 48% consider sexual orientation equity also to be important issues. Market research has shown that 60% of Generation Z will selectively support brands and organizations that take a stand on issues they believe in regarding human rights, racial equity, and sexual orientation, and 77% feel that businesses and organizations should make doing good a central part of their operations. Therefore, it is critical that Generation Z students feel their institutions support their desire to expand equity and inclusion so that all students feel safe, supported, and welcome. Generation Z is also very career-focused. This generation has come of age during the recession years, so they feel strongly about the importance of career development, as do their predominantly Generation X parents. Generation Z's parents are pushing them to focus on careers even starting in high school. 55% of high school students say they feel pressure from their parents to start professional development activities while they're in high school, and 42% say this pressure is because of the effects of the recession. Luckily for us, this generation also knows that further education is the path to a better future. 86% of Generation Z feel that the more education they have, the more money they'll make. But they're also concerned with cost. Anxiety over being able to afford college education is on the forefront of the minds of these students and their families, with 80% of high school students reporting being very to extremely concerned about the cost of college. Generation Z is so focused on college debt, they insist on getting the skills and experiences that will lead to a career minus the extras. Research is indicating that this generation doesn't care as much about fancy residence halls and recreation centers as millennials did. What they do want is education that is useful and relevant to their careers post-graduation. For many, their preference is on experiential learning. 79% of Generation Z think it is important that educational programs integrate internships, apprenticeships, and community engagement. Concerned about their future, they look at learning experiences through the lens of utility and long-term benefit for getting a job after graduation. These students are also used to having access to on-demand knowledge at the click of a mouse. 33% of current college students say they supplement their academic courses with YouTube videos. Customization is also key. 72% of Generation Z think colleges should allow students to design their own majors. Unfortunately, this generation also grew up with No Child Left Behind, which saw the widespread elimination of visual arts, dance, theater, and music from the K through 12 curriculum in favor of added emphasis on reading, math, and standardized testing. Overall, Generation Z has had more limited exposure to learning associated with creative development. With Generation Z's tendency towards risk aversion and lack of educational experiences to practice creative thinking, getting these students to push boundaries may be a challenge. Surrounded by DIY and crowdsourced everything, this generation is also very entrepreneurial in nature. 42% of high school students say they plan to start their own businesses. 61% of high school students said they'd rather own their own businesses than be an employee. And 47% said their schools offer classes in how to start and run a business. Female students were equally likely as male students to say that they will invent something that will change the world. And students of color were more likely to express an interest in entrepreneurship than their white peers. Also, this generation has volunteering in their blood. According to a 2015 report from the Department of Labor, 26% of teenagers aged 16 to 19 said they volunteered on a weekly basis. So combining their high rate of volunteerism, emphasis on social justice and equity issues, and entrepreneurial spirit, it is no wonder that Generation Z said social entrepreneur was one of their most popular career choices. When surveyed about their preferred learning style, Generation Z overwhelmingly chose intrapersonal learning. They prefer to use methods that require self-reliance. The influence of technology, where students feel that they can seek out information on their own with little help from others, has likely contributed to their preference for working alone. 38% said they prefer to learn by watching or reading course materials independently, and 51% prefer to apply what they've learned in class under the guidance of a teacher. However, these students also see the value in working with others, or at least near them. 80% of Generation Z students reported they studied with friends, not necessarily in collaboration, but rather in the same space as friends. 67% said studying with friends makes learning more fun. Think of the concept of co-working, students working independently, yet sharing the same space or location, whether that be in the same physical space, like studios, or virtually on Skype or Google Docs. Those who study learning spaces predict that libraries will play a more prominent role on college campuses for these reasons. Libraries not only provide necessary research, resources, and tools, but also offer a physical atmosphere conducive to independent, co-working, and small group work. So what can we bring about how Generation Z thinks, what they value, and how they prefer to engage to the classroom?